Violet fungus, myconids. Any one of them could be capable of burrowing into our players' brains and becoming super sick and cool. They wouldn't even know how to defeat it. But it's no good. Plant bosses, they're so lame, it's not even possible to play them. So if that happens, we lose. Morning everyone, I'm Willowares, and today we're going to talk about D&D big bad bosses. So D&D plant bosses aren't great, but they have all the right building blocks for an endgame villain. We're going to break down why plant monsters suck, and how to make them awesome. So that means diving into what makes plant monsters actually cool mechanically, how to extract that, and then repot it in a way that makes your players go, oh, and if you're a player, don't worry, I have not forgotten about you. I have something for you as well. So grab a little sippy and settle on in, because we're going to transform your next boss battle into something special. D&D has plenty of plant monsters, lots with really cool flavor, but not a ton of big bad material in these guys. Mechanically, you're going to see a lot of poisoning, AoE, and attacks that limit movement, like grappling. So starting out, for example, we've got the Awakened Shrub. He's categorized as a small plant with an AC of 9 with 10 hit points. This guy is no mystery. He's basically just a shrub with a touch of sentience. He also has the ability of False Appearance, which reads, while a shrub remains motionless, it is indistinguishable from a normal shrub, which, I mean, yeah, that's a very, did not expect that ability, that the shrub looks like a shrub, but hey, he's got the range of being a perfect low-level enemy to a charming companion that you can hide stuff in. So, a guest star on VeggieTales? Definitely. Boss material? Maybe not so much. Probably a D- for boss material. Next up, we have the Shambling Mound. This guy, he's actually a pretty good guy. He's a large plant with an AC of 15 and an HP pool of 136. A big part of his overall mechanic is grappling, so if the party isn't careful, the Shambling Mound can easily swallow up the squishier characters in the party and basically choke them to death, which is super neat. Wow! Though I think the nature of his design opens him up to be anything but a plant, and that can make him actually even more interesting, which defeats the purpose of him specifically being a plant boss. Like, for example, if he was made out of rocks, or sand, or flesh, I don't think anything would be lost. In fact, a flesh shambling mound sounds great, and I'm sure it's probably been done before. Definitely not a flesh golem, that is completely different. Great mini-boss, maybe, but he's a classic regardless, so let's give him a B-. Depending on where you look, the Kelpie is either a fae or a plant monster, but since Bro's literally made out of seaweed, I think he fits in perfectly with our theme just fine. It's a monster that shows up in homebrew content quite a lot because of its extremely compelling visual. Depending on where you're getting your description from, Kelpies are A, horse-shaped masses of seaweed, or B, creatures that look like they're made of seaweed in the shape of a horse. They typically reside in water or nearby, and they charm humanoids and grapple them until they drown. Obviously, it's been playtested since 1759, so this puppy's got some miles on it, but once again, sort of lacks the drama that players want for a big battle. However, I think it's a super convincing creature to use as a skill check encounter, so let's pop him up at a C+. And coming in for our first huge-sized plant monster, we have the Awakened Tree. He's got a 13 AC, 59 hit points, he can slam you to death, and has the completely unique False Appearance trait. Quote, while the tree remains motionless, it is indistinguishable from a normal tree, unquote. Basically, a tree with a touch of sentience. He's got the range of being a perfect low-level enemy to a charming companion that you can hide stuff in. This is completely different than the Awakened Shrub. By the way, they're totally not the same. D+. Oh, okay. Alright, the what are those words? Vegeta ponies and my cone heads. Vegeta ponies and my cone heads. I'll be tackling these two at once since they kind of represent the spore people of D&D. These dudes are super cool. B+ for guys I would definitely want to hang out with. My favorite plants are definitely the ones that have societies, rituals, average intelligence. Myconids are a very richly developed type of creature within D&D lore, so there are several variants that I encourage you to check out, meaning that they have a range of stats, sizes, and AC. Vegepygmies are definitely the smaller of the two, both lore-wise and size-wise, with a size of small, and an average AC of about 13. The Vegepygmies are a bit more mean, as they propagate by poisoning creatures with their highly toxic fungus called russet mold. They're also super annoying to fight at low levels sometimes, due to their regeneration ability. ability, gaining 3 HP at the start of their turn. Myconids, on the other hand, are the more peaceful, though itty-bitty bit isolationist mushroom folk. They raise their young in literal kindergartens, which is adorable. The weaker ones can punch you to death, which I guess is adorable in a way, while the more powerful myconids have the ability to reanimate corpses.
Yo, do you play Plants vs. Zombies?
What?
Do you play Plants vs. Zombies?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, do you play Plants vs. Zombies?
Bro, no, what are you, 12?
This gives a little variation to combat, as when you fight a myconid village, you're probably also going to be fighting some kind of undead. A neat thing they utilize is a meditative state called the meld, where their spores mix together and they share this sort of group consciousness. They can use these spores to talk to the non-myconids as well. For this reason, they're a fantastic opportunity for the party to negotiate rather than fight. Of course, only if you want to. Once again though, I would not say either of these guys necessarily bring the drama. They aren't really scary to me. So C- for boss material. Next up we have the Treant. J.R. Tolkien really said, what if these guys just, what if they walk around? They are, you guessed it, tree monsters that are generally more peaceful. They're our second huge plant monster we'll be looking at today with an AC of 16 and 138 hit point pool. The Treant's ultimate goal is to live out their days peacefully chilling with their forest friends. So they only really want to fight when they're protecting their forest. Because of this, they gotta go kinda low on the boss ranker, unless you are running a very evil campaign. They have some cool abilities, such as shape-shifting to look like other trees, even animating trees around them to assist in battle. Wait a second, these kinda seem a little familiar. And yes, fun fact, they are actually just a super special wiser variety of the awakened tree. Oh, no, oh god, who put those in there? Next is the Oblovax. From what I can find, the Oblovax hasn't been officially slotted into 5e, but I've encountered him in some homebrew adventures, and I think he's just great. This is a moss that devours the memories of its victims, and can project mossy Naruto clones of whoever's memories it's munched on. Now, this guy is both hot and funny, because according to his info, he has he has an innate hatred for moving creatures. Which to me just shows crazy commitment. Number 1 hater, Oblovax. He's like a B+, because obviously he's got a lot of confirmed kills under his belt. This enemy is really good at wiping low-level parties. Like the Shambling Mound, he isolates members from the rest of the party and removes them from combat, so if you aren't working together, it's super easy to get overwhelmed. But he only has average intelligence, which actually is kind of surprising considering he eats memories. And he can't really move, at least not that fast, so the more knowledgeable parties can avoid him pretty easily. But there's definitely something there about him.
Foreshadowing as a narrative device, and
obviously there's more, but you get the gist. There's lots of other plant monsters in D&D, of course, like the Shrieker, the Violet Fungus, and I'd love to hear your favorite one and why in the comments below. But plant monsters, at the end of the day, have a ton of cool things about them, but in order to get that big bad evil guy energy, we have to make a couple of changes. Plant monsters have the biggest potential to be some of the most unsettling, scary monsters in the game. Now, you're probably wondering why I say this after shitting on them for a few minutes or so let's get into what I actually love about them. You see, plants are hot. And what I love about most plant types in D&D is that they're often designed around the very plant-like need of propagation. They are always trying to get it on. This is probably why plant enemies are officially frequently cited as the sexy monster class of D&D.
Just call 1-900-860-2
Plants.
Eavesdrop on 2
Plants.
talking privately.
On a more serious note, and why this is actually scary, propagation from a plant perspective is unrelenting. The second thing is that propagation is usually very gross. Whether it's through infectious spores, ripping out the hearts of living beings and sticking them into a tree stump, or just using an adventurer's body as fertilizer, plant monsters really tend to push the themes of body horror. You only have to look at franchises like The Last of Us or Annihilation, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, to see that plant horror is cosmic horror. It's just the type that we find in our backyard. And by cosmic horror, I do mean that particular brand of unknowable, indescribable horror. The fear of the unknown that's personified in big bads like Cthulhu. For plants, Lovecraftian tentacles are just vines and roots. The thousand eyes are just an empty seed pod, and the dread of entropy, after all, is just when we decay into the dirt to feed whatever horror has survived us. These are all components of a truly scary monster. So why do so many plant monsters in D&D fall flat? Why are so many reduced to starting areas, and where is my big bad bushy boy? So overall, plants are actually kinda dumb. They're hot, as anyone with 2 eyes can see. They're gross, but unfortunately they are mostly dumb. It kind of makes the compelling body horror a little awkward, I guess.
Yeah, you look like a birthday present and all that. Thank you so much. You want to open me? Find out what's in? It's cold and I don't know. I guess no comment.
Even the Vegapygmy and the Mike Shard's Lemonades and the Oblivax, while having some intelligence, kind of lack that cold, calculating feeling we get from their Lovecraftian neighbors. Most of them would just rather be left alone, being sexy and snapping up nearby bodies, and Myconids don't even like being near too many people. I don't think an Oblivax would even want to walk down the street, much less take over a kingdom. While I can absolutely picture a treant slaying on the catwalk, I can't really picture a treant plotting a world takeover. And can you really scale a Kelpie to be the final battle after a year-long campaign? I mean, of course you can. As everybody knows, D&D players are actually some of the smartest people alive. I'm just trying to make a point here. So knowing this, how can we elevate a plant monster from just being undeniably attractive to a true baddie? What could really plus a lot of these guys would be a big bad evil plan, a plot. How scary is the monster in your basement if he just stays under the stairs? The Oblivax, even being one of the more notorious TPK machines of D&D, just stays in one spot and is totally cool with it. What we need is a creature with ambition.
Every second you're not running, I'm only getting closer.
And I don't want an evil druid or an evil fey lord. Gosh darn it, I want a plant. I want an evil piece of celery to chase me down a dark hallway. So let's add that to our big bad evil guy soup. We want him to be sexy, gross, and now with a college degree. So let's see what we can cook up. The broodmoss is typically a reclusive creature. You'll often find her in underground tunnels, basements, somewhere dim and damp, quiet and removed. She can take many shapes, perhaps humanoid, or when at rest, a slowly writhing mass of lichen and roots. There's only one constant. A broodmoss needs bodies, and she is always hungry. But in order to enact her plan, she will need one willing subject. Every broodmoss has a chosen stalk, someone who has inevitably stumbled upon her and agreed to bring more into the brood. They will willingly ingest a portion of the moss, allowing her to attach to the brain and spread. The broodmoss then absorbs the knowledge of the subject, in turn opening up the stalk's mind to her treasure trove of memories. They then return to the surface to slowly infect those around them. The stalk can spread the broodmoss to anyone they choose. The only requirement is that they must be close enough to touch, to allow the spores to travel to the new victim. Over a short amount of time, the unwilling victims will be completely infected, as there are no symptoms until it's too late. Without even knowing it, innocents are recruited into the brood. It's fun to think of various scenarios where this could happen. Perhaps a greedy mayor of a dying town wants success, or an old wizard is so voraciously hungry for knowledge he'd be willing to take his whole town down with him. This would be an excellent NPC to introduce to the party that later pops up as a mini-boss. Those that are infected with the broodmoss seem to know just a bit too much, so towns that have a broodmoss often flourish with new industry, technology, and business acumen. The moss can heal wounds and make a person stronger. It's nearly impossible to fool someone who's been infected, yet at the same time, anyone infected with the moss does seem to move a bit slower, as if they're trying to parse through hundreds of voices trying to tell them something. Broodlings can travel as far from the broodmother as she wishes. However, the longer a broodling is infected, the more the moss grows, eventually showing itself. What's more, the players might figure out that anything said to a broodling is also spoken directly to the broodmoss herself, and if she wishes, she can reply back. Think of every person who is infected with the moss as a two-way telephone directly to the final boss. Throughout the party's adventure, she can check in, troll a little, and then leave. A broodmoss can split several times, potentially holding the memories and knowledge of dozens of towns. She can be a young, perhaps a bit naive, power-hungry teenager, or a wizened yet indubitably sexy, power-hungry grandma. It's all up to the DM. Perhaps the broodmoss has ingested the memories of someone the party knew. Imagine walking through the town and some random NPC starts spilling secrets about the party they thought were long lost to their past. The goal of the broodmoss is to consume enough bodies and be strong enough to propagate into another town. The broodmoss will need a set number of bodies to achieve this. This can change depending on if the DM is making the broodmoss the boss of the encounter, an adventure, or a whole campaign, and it's up to the party to stop it. The brood moss awaits at the end of the dungeon. Between you and her are bodies in various states of decay, the bodies of those who have returned. Maybe the party will see some familiar faces. The closer you get, the less sentient and more aggressive they become. They will do anything to protect the root ball. It is their mama, after all, even hastily completing the ritual of reabsorption. Before you can get to the brood moss, you'll have to get through her number one fan, her stalk, perhaps that old wizard we talked about earlier, or anything the DM wants. And maybe, after the party defeats him, the brood moss finally absorbs him and collects her debt. When a brood moss absorbs her stalk or any other willing body, she recovers health. But more importantly, she can use their knowledge to cast spells and use their abilities. And it's an interesting combat choice for the party. Do they focus on the broodlings? Do they kill the stalk and risk making the final boss even harder? Once again, this can be a sliding scale for the DM to make the encounter as hard or as easy as they'd like. And the brood moss doesn't have to be a plain old baddie either. Maybe in some situations the brood moss is a form of good and the people are completely aware of her presence. Elden Ring does this with the horns. I love this world building flavor of something that can be seen as abhorrent while in the next DLC area over it's seen as a blessing, or something that separates them into their own community. She could only infect those she deems worthy or needing her guidance. Maybe those with moss leaking out of their eyes are seen as fortunate. Perhaps she's in a town with mostly elderly folks, allowing them to live out their last few years comfortably. Or maybe she brings knowledge to a struggling village, healing those less fortunate. It could be that the brood moss's personality is affected by who she absorbs. Maybe brood moss just fight each other, sending their stalks into battle again and again to die. Either way, I think the mark of an interesting creature in D&D is one you can slot into many different situations and stories. Now, what if you're like, oh, Willowares, I love plants, I think about them every day, but I'm not a DM, I'm a player. Well, hey, I would say this, that the player can eat moss too. That's the platform I'm running on. The player can eat, everybody eats moss. No, it's our moss. It's not your not moss, it's not my moss, it's the people's moss. Hailing from a town famous for their ancient, incredibly wise brood moss, the brood moss warlock finds himself with a difficult path ahead of him. His brood moss has just absorbed the previous stalk and crowned him as the newest envoy of her budding empire. One town is not enough for her. She aspires for much more. The warlock not only feels the pressure to continue his family line and serve, but now must decide if resigning those he meets along the way to the same fate is a blessing or a curse. I think we did a pretty good job, don't you? And hey, it's all for you, baby. Here's a big beautiful picture and stat block that you can download in the description for free for $0. That's $0. Completely free for you. If the brood moss sounds like a good time, and hey, she certainly looks like a good time, I have a whole different stat block on my Patreon for phase 2 of this encounter for that good JRPG final phase boss battle flavor. And since this is my first video, I also threw in an item loot drop for your players that is personalized to this very monster. Yes, I made an item based off the brood moss, so when your players finally defeat her, they can pick up their very own unique weapon. It's got a nice description that links it back to the brood moss herself, and I think it would also slot nicely for a brood moss warlock too, if you feel like taking that route. I even sized it so you can print them out and paste them onto a card made out of paper. Made from a plant. You can find this in the description under the subscribe and like button, and if you'd like to click those, I just started this thing and it helps appease the moss. And if you don't agree that D&D plants are the most attractive, comment below and tell me why, and why you're wrong. I mean, thank you so much for sticking through my video, everybody. I'll be launching something cool next week, so I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. Goodbye.